The episode starts with Rhaenyra at what I believe to be Storm's End, the seat of House Baratheon, head house of the Stormlands. That house name may seem familiar, as Robert Baratheon is the king at the outset of Game of Thrones. Rhaenyra is currently partway through her tour of Westeros to find a potential partner for marriage. It seems that the plan is for her to travel to all the castles of the head houses and be presented with all the suitors in the region there, rather than travel to each suitor directly. The old man presenting himself as a suitor at the start of the episode is said to be from House Dondarrion, making him ancestor to Beric Dondarrion from Game of Thrones. After being brutally rejected by Rhaenyra, he is followed by a child from House Blackwood, who is heckled by a member of House Bracken from the crowd. I thought this was a very clever inclusion, as these two houses have had a long-standing rivalry and animosity toward each other throughout Westerosi history. The meek Blackwood child, however, proves his prowess by slaying his Bracken rival, prompting Rhaenyra to cut the event short. Will this killing have consequences in the future? We'll just have to wait and see. Despite the wishes of her father, King Viserys, this violent incident is seemingly the straw that breaks the camel's back for Rhaenyra, prompting her to end her tour 2 months early and return to King's Landing. She happens to be returning at the same time as her uncle Daemon, who, if you recall, has been away for the past 3 years fighting in the War for the Stepstones. It seems that since his defeat of the Triarchy, the people of the Stepstones have dubbed him King of the Narrow Sea. However, in an attempt to show good faith toward his brother, he hands him both his crown and the fallen crowd leader's weapon, affirming that Viserys is the one true king. Despite the disapproving glares of Otto, Viserys welcomes Daemon back into court with gratefulness and open arms. Daemon's conversation with Rhaenyra at the celebration of his return poses some interesting questions. In episode 2, we saw that Daemon had not actually gotten Mysaria pregnant, but had lied about doing so. In episode 1, we saw him trying to have sex with Mysaria, but he was unable to finish. In this episode, Rhaenyra comments about how his wife in the Vale is lucky that he had not yet gotten her pregnant. Could this be hinting that Daemon is potentially infertile or suffering from erectile dysfunction? After all, he has likely had plenty of sex with plenty of women. Without contraception existing at the time, it seems strange they wouldn't at least have some bastards to his name. Later that night, Daemon leaves a map in Rhaenyra's bedroom, showing the location of a secret passageway within the room. The Red Keep is actually filled with secret tunnels and passages. We saw them used by both Varys and Tyrion in Game of Thrones. The original architect of the Red Keep was Maegor the Cruel, the third king in the Targaryen dynasty. Upon the completion of the castle, in order to ensure the secrecy of these passages, Maegor actually ordered the execution of every person involved in its construction. Still, it seems that many throughout history, including Daemon, have clearly discovered them and learned their routes. Leading Rhaenyra to him through the secret passageways, Daemon takes her for a night out on the Street of Silk, which is essentially the King's Landing equivalent of a red light district. He brings her to a satirical play covering the current succession conflict of the royal family. It's clear from the actors and the crowd of spectators that, due to her being a woman, Rhaenyra's claim to the throne is not supported by the common folk. Daemon seemingly took her to this play to teach her the valuable lesson that, even in an absolute monarchy, popularity is key to maintaining power. Daemon then brings Rhaenyra to the final location on his planned route for the night, a pleasure den. Notice he purposely removes Rhaenyra's disguise hat upon entering, exposing her identity to all in the den. After guiding her deeper into the den and increasing her excitement with all of its sights and sounds, Daemon begins to make out with her. Mind you, Rhaenyra is not only underage, but is his biological niece. Whether intentionally or out of aforementioned sexual difficulties, Daemon ceases his attempt at sex with Rhaenyra and abandons her deep in the den. Upon her exit from the den, Rhaenyra is spotted by a child who turns out to be a spy for Daemon's former lover, Mysaria. It seems that in the 3 years since Daemon abandoned her to fight in the Stepstones, she has become an unofficial master of whispers of sorts, gathering information and feeding it to the small council, particularly the hand of the King Otto. Still excited from the sexual attention of Daemon, Rhaenyra makes her way back to the Red Keep, where she coerces her personal guard, Criston Cole, into sex. Remember, Criston is not only sworn to celibacy as a member of the King's Guard, but it is illegal for anyone to have sex with a royal female outside of marriage. Ironically, news spreads not of her actual intercourse, but of her encounter with Daemon. It spreads from the child that spotted her, to Mysaria, to Otto, to the king, and then is overheard by Alicent. Before Viserys even talks to Rhaenyra, Alicent proceeds to confront her about her encounter with Daemon. This seems to be partially out of sincere care for Rhaenyra, but also out of jealousy. While Rhaenyra is seemingly able to go off and have such encounters with men, Alicent is trapped at the Red Keep, forced to entertain Viserys' sexual whims and pump out children regardless of her own desire. While confessing most of the events of her night out, Rhaenyra staunchly denies that Daemon even touched her, lying while swearing on her mother. This is an early hint that Rhaenyra isn't purely good, and is capable of incredibly unethical behavior in order to keep herself and those she loves safe. Regardless of Rhaenyra's claimed innocence, King Viserys summons an extremely hungover Daemon to the throne room. Here, the puzzle pieces of Daemon's plan truly unfold. After winning the war in the Stepstones, he returned to King's Landing and swore loyalty to his brother King Viserys, placing him in a favorable eye to him. He then takes Rhaenyra out and shows her a play that enforces the idea in her head that she needs a man in order to be seen more favorably as a ruler by the people. He then takes her to a pleasure den, where he purposely removes her disguise, allowing many people to potentially recognize her. He doesn't even bother with the disguise himself, taking her to an area where he is clearly already well known and obviously recognizable. He then attempts to initiate intercourse with her that could be seen by others. Regardless of his ability to complete the deed, this is more than enough ammunition to spread the perception of it happening. With her virginity appearing to be taken, Lords of the Realm will likely no longer want her, rooting both her legitimacy as a ruler and Viserys' plans for her to find a husband. Daemon then swoops in as seemingly the only man that will take her as she is. That is why he doesn't tell Viserys the truth that he didn't actually have sex with her. Whether he is truly in love with his niece or he just wants the throne for himself, it's hard to say at this point. I would guess that the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but we'll just have to wait and see. Regardless, his plane crashes and burns, and he is once again banished from King's Landing by Viserys. Viserys then summons Rhaenyra to confront her about her time with Daemon. Regardless of her claimed innocence, he is still enraged with her. The perception that she is no longer a virgin is out there in the world. As punishment, and due to the fact that lords will no longer desire her hand in marriage, he revokes her ability to choose her own husband and forces her to marry Laenor Velaryon, Corlys' son. As I mentioned in my last episode breakdown, marrying Rhaenyra to Laenor would be the best marriage politically for the Targaryens. This would mend the damage caused 3 years prior by Viserys marrying Alicent Hightower instead of Corlys' daughter Laena. As we saw earlier in the episode, unlike Daemon, Corlys had not returned to King's Landing after the war. Rather, he traveled to another country entirely, Braavos. If you recall, this was the Three City on the eastern continent of Essos where Arya trained to be a faceless assassin in Game of Thrones. Corlys now plans to marry his daughter Laena to the Sea Lord of Braavos, the city-state's leader. The alliance of the second most powerful house in Westeros, one of the most powerful free cities, would be disastrous for the throne. A marriage between Rhaenyra and Laenor would potentially win back House Velaryon to the side of the Targaryens and put a stop to Corlys' Braavosi ambitions. Rhaenyra accepts this deal, but under the condition that Otto Hightower is fired from his position as Hand of the King. After all, it's pretty clear that he indirectly spied on her in order to lessen her claim to the throne and boost that of his grandson Aegon II. Viserys actually agrees with this compromise, and promptly removes Otto's handship. Viserys clearly wasn't as oblivious to Otto's schemes as he seemed in previous episodes, since he confronts Otto directly about planting Alicent as a comfort to him following the death of his worst wife, Aemma. This episode ends with the Maester bringing Rhaenyra moon tea, the brewing of which has seemingly been ordered by King Viserys. Moon tea is essentially the Westerosi equivalent of an abortion. Drinking it is intended to kill any fetus that may be growing in the womb. However, it is extremely difficult to brew. An improperly brewed batch can lead to both health issues for the drinker, as well as birth defects on future children they do have. We actually saw an example of the defects it can cause in Game of Thrones. Lysa Arryn had drank moon tea to abort a previous conception she had with Littlefinger. However, it led to her later son, Robin Arryn, having major health issues. Before the end of this breakdown, I wanted to cover 2 points that I didn't really have a place to fit in elsewhere. Firstly, I wanted to talk about the wounds on King Viserys' body. They seem to be growing in number and intensity with each passing episode. There's a popular theory that the Iron Throne is actually infused with magic. The throne physically manifests its disdain for unworthy rulers by cutting them while they sit in it. We've seen many bad rulers get cut by the throne throughout the history of the Targaryen dynasty. For example, the Mad King Aerys, Daenerys' father, would often get cut by its blades. Joffrey has even been shown to get cut once or twice by the throne. Viserys seems to be getting covered in these cuts, as shown when they've been attempted to be healed in previous episodes, and while he's having sex with Alicent in this episode. A theory is of course a theory, but regardless, the symbolism is still there. Secondly, during his confrontation with Rhaenyra, Viserys gives her a deeper look at the knife that seems to manifest the prophecy he discussed in episode 1. We find out that Aegon the Conqueror had his prophecy literally inscribed on said knife. In Valyrian, the text on the blade literally reads, "From my blood come the prince that was promised, and his will be the song of ice and fire." This is almost the exact same thing that Rhaegar Targaryen said about one of his newborn sons in a vision that Daenerys had in the books. This further proves the theory I outlined in my episode 1 breakdown that Rhaegar knew about this prophecy, and it is why he kidnapped Lyanna Stark and conceived Jon Snow with her in the first place, inciting Robert's Rebellion and subsequently the events of the Game of Thrones show and the A Song of Ice and Fire book series. Overall, this was definitely my favorite episode yet. It was so dense with material to discuss that there's just no way I caught it all. If there's anything you think I missed, don't hesitate to leave it down in the comments below. I'd love to discuss further. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content of this nature, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can also ring that notification bell to be updated whenever I upload a new video. If you'd like to check out my fiction writing as well as my vlog channel, visit my website withkoji.com/ActorandHime. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next week for episode 5.